You know, if I had a nickel for every furry detective game, I'd have 5 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that we have 5, right? Not that I'm complaining. I have a weakness to the genre. I love The Wolf Among Us, and Black Sad is one of my favorite graphic novels, so imagine my shock, imagine my awe when I learned of a new thing to fill that oddly specific niche. And that thing is Backbone. Backbone is a Kickstarter project about a private detective raccoon named Howard Lodor who gets hired to find a missing husband, a rather common setup for a very uncommon game. It was made by Eggnut, a small team of around 19 people give or take who spent 5 years making it, releasing a critically acclaimed prologue a while back. Since this review is like fresh milk, that is to say spoiler free, I'll refrain from saying anything more, but know that it eventually spirals out in some pretty wild and wacky territory. Now that you know the basic facts, allow me to get my intro out of the way. Hello everyone, been a while since we last did one of these reviews. Like and subscribe to get more of them if you'd be so kind. This is a greeting from the far side of the galaxy. Come listen to Fury's transmission as I walk you through the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful of Backbone. The good of Backbone should be quite obvious from what your eyes and ears are telling you. I don't vibe with pixel games too often, but goddamn does this game manage to make every moment fantastic. The graphics and soundtrack have this nice, normal yet dystopic feeling as you play through the game. Even when things are normal and positive, the music retains this deep, jazzy bass line to make it feel oppressive no matter where you are. I didn't buy the soundtrack, so I can't really play any songs for you, so I ask you to settle for whatever jazz I put in the background. Is it Skullgirls? It's probably Skullgirls. I've mentioned before that I'm not a fan of pixel graphics, but Backbone managed to really hold my attention and keep everything identifiable. The only instances of me not understanding what I was looking at that wasn't intentional, this game can get pretty trippy at times, was Clarissa and her buddy Suze. For some reason, I keep thinking Clarissa is a dog instead of a bear, and I didn't realize Suze was a girl until further inspection. The art is pretty engaging, with enough animation and moving pieces that things don't feel static or flat. While the art isn't bad, I can't actually name any specific moments where I stopped to marvel at any of the backgrounds, aside from maybe getting a look at the walls for the first time. And speaking of the walls, the story and setting are something I absolutely love about Backbone, so I'll save most of it for the last section. But I will say that for a game with multiple dialogue options, they do a solid job of creating a character for Howard. He comes off as this good-natured yet naive man who is so desperate to try and do something good that he ends up way over his head. Because this is spoiler-free, I'm going to have to leave basically everything after the prologue out because oh boy, is there a surprise hidden there. It makes this review quite hard to do, but I will say this. Renee is best girl, and if any of you dare disagree with me in the comments section, I swear to myself, I will fucking smite you. With my threats out of the way, let us move to the next section of the review. Despite Backbone being a detective game, it is not really that. Mostly because the game is very simple and very linear. Despite what you may be used to in games like this, Backbone only has one definitive ending, although from what I know, there are some different routes you can take to get there. That being said, the game does tend to follow a sort of go here, do that sort of style of gameplay that doesn't tend to make you wonder if you can fail. An example of this is the time we investigate a store owner regarding their relationship with Clarissa, and maybe it was just my playstyle, but he buckled pretty easily and told me what I wanted, an event that repeats itself later with the scientist. To compound on this, there aren't many moments when you aren't doing interviews to progress the plot, which I suppose is accurate to real detective work, but it's not that conducive to making fun gameplay. There are 2 real puzzles I can think of off the top of my head, one of them being included in the prologue so many have already experienced and solved it, and the other one is so easy I can basically brute force my way past it. And there's only 2 moments in which sneaking, an act that has its own dedicated button, is only really used twice. The most I got out of it was just sort of digging around. This leads to much of the gameplay part of the game feeling lackluster, as new gameplay elements aren't consistently introduced and what is there isn't really used all that well. There's a whole inventory system that can be brought up with the select button, but its only real use from what I can discover is a way to see all the things you picked up. Why have all these gameplay elements and then do nothing with it? Overall, the bad isn't actually that bad. I don't mind linear gameplay when the story is this good. In fact, the story, setting, character, and writing in general is so good that it makes the ugly so bad. And speaking of the ugly, let us get right into it. This game is so fucking short. I'm slow and a fucking idiot, and I managed to beat this game in 4 hours. That is so fucking short. It's so short that when you reach the ending of the game, you half expect to unlock a second story or something, but the game just ends with quite a lot of unfinished business. The answers the game gives are very bare bones. You learn what sort of Machiavellian scheme is going on in the background of the world, but every other plot thread is left tangled up without ever being unwound. But the bigger problem than the lack of payoff is the lack of time we get to see the characters and the world. We get to know Howard with some depth, but just about everything else never gets to go beyond the surface. Which is weird because there's clearly stuff deeper. Renee clearly has some sort of family issues that are similar to the little we know of Howard's, and then there's Clarissa and her ambitions, which aren't as evil as her methods, and these things are great ideas that just aren't explored. The issue of not digging into the depth that the game has extends past the characters and into the setting. The setting of Backbone is this noir animal dystopia with apes on tops, followed by carnivores, other animals, and then finally the rodents. Huh, I just noticed that there's a lack of herbivores in this game. Anyway, this social strata is also enforced by this religious teaching through this figure called the Preacher. The things we learn about this enigmatic preacher is that he first showed up during these great fires a long time ago, that he set up the wall that surrounds the city, and that it's when the alliance between the apes and the bears was solidified. And yeah, we learned that, yeah, that's pretty much it. This preacher character is so interesting, and yet there is so much that just goes unexplored and unresolved. There are some other unexplored things that I want to talk about, mostly this special little MacGuffin called the Artifact. Is that a spoiler to say? I mean, the deluxe version of the game is called the Artifact Edition, so... And said MacGuffin is very important to the game, yet is only really a present existence for like a third of it. And because the game is only 4 hours long, we only get about an hour and a half, if I stretch it, to learn about the most important thing in the game. Backbone is great, what is there is absolutely fantastic, but there's just not much. And that really sucks because I genuinely want to play more. As it stands right now, I'm glad I didn't buy the Artifact Edition. I'm not too sure it can justify a $26 price tag, let alone a $24 price tag when Hollow Knight is just $15. It just sucks, man. But because I don't want to end this review on a bad note, let's start with the final section. I can't express how much I am blown away by the world Backbone presents. It doesn't feel like the generic dystopia, it feels unique, fresh, and new. Even as far as animal dystopias go, this one is fan-tucking-fasting. It starts out as this relatively simple dystopia with animals instead of people, only dropping hints of something bigger and bigger that goes way beyond the prologue's plot twist. And it takes advantage of these twisted expectations through some mind-bending sound and level design. Certain things like the normally jazzy soundtrack becoming more synthetic and fucked as the world gets more and more twisted does wonders for instilling feelings in the player. You can feel the slow deterioration of Howard's psyche and begin to question yourself. How can you not after experiencing something like this? This is all on top of some wonderful thematic writing that asks what it means to be you, and the constant growth and change we experience as creatures just existing and interacting with other people. A theme reinforced by the people in the world which make it feel so fucking alive. For example, you can come across this lonely old lady feeding the pigeons. You can spend some time talking to her to learn that she's beginning to feel a little lonely. Further down the road, you meet an old man trying to fish his wedding ring out of a grate. He's so insistent on getting his wedding ring because it reminds him of his late wife. And while you can't get his wedding ring, you can convince him to spend some time with the old lady so they can sit, talk, and feed the birds. It does nothing to impact the main narrative, but it does serve to make the world go past just our protagonist. It kind of makes me wish that there was a hub world or at least a place you return to over the course of the game to at least see some side characters have some sort of growing and expanding story. It's small, but it does a lot for the player, might have gone a long way to making the game not feel so lacking and empty and short. As the game stands right now, it feels less like Backbone and more like bare bones. There's something there, a skeleton for a really nice and solid experience that's just not there. As such, I give this game 6 bags of chips out of 10, maybe 7 if I'm feeling nice. What's there is pretty good, but you end up getting a whole lot of nothing with it. I'm hopeful to see what Eggnut and Raw Fury do next because these developers have loads of great ideas and even more potential. What they'll do with their ideas is something even I can't predict. I'm just a humble alien transmitting from the far side of the galaxy, thanking you for tuning in and asking you to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you enjoyed. You should also stay tuned because I have a lot of projects planned for this month, including some videos I'll strive to release on time and a final space on my videos to make list. Maybe watch some of my other stuff that should be appearing on screen right now if I manage to figure out this whole YouTube thing. Before we go, I must say the line I haven't said since those Final Space videos oh so long ago. The stars shine and the cosmos smiles down at us. If they can, then you can too. This is Fury, ending transmission.